Lawmakers support the government's proposed amendments to the Safeguarding National Security Bill. Details of the redevelopment plan for an iconic public housing estate in the Southern District. And a ship carrying food aid now on its way to Gaza as Israel plans to move displaced Palestinians in Rafah to another part of the Strip. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. All members of the Legislative Council Bills Committee support amendments to the Safeguarding National Security Bill tabled by the government today. This after the committee finished the initial scrutiny of the bill. Mumusangay reports.
The Bills Committee held 2 extra meetings today to discuss the 50-page amendments to the Safeguarding National Security Bill proposed by the government. A lawmaker raised a question about the broadness of the definition of the offence of sabotaging and endangering national security.
Say, for instance, someone stages a financial war to affect our SWIFT system or linked exchange rate system. Would this clause cover this circumstance? For other types of acts that may endanger national security, we'll have to consider the actual circumstances. Our purpose is not to broaden the interpretation or definition. We just want to cover more public infrastructure here.
After the amendments, the Secretary for Security can impose restrictions on organizations that endanger national security. The government decided to expand the clause to include shadow organizations.
What if it's an online platform? Say if we're talking about doing business, say selling roasted goose, then perhaps you can have some shadow shops, some fake shops. Now, if you set up an online platform, this cannot be dealt with by local legislation. Will it be dealt with by the HKNSL? The element of the offence is whether this is a shadow organization or prohibited organization. This organization may either have a physical address or an online platform, as long as a group of people sharing the same idea, goal or purpose, engage in certain activities, whether a physical premises exists for them or they gather on the online platform, this will apply.
The Bills Committee will report the amendments to the House Committee on Friday. The second reading of the bill could start as early as next Wednesday. News 9, TVB News.
Secretary for Security Chris Tang has criticized a newspaper story about Article 23 legislation for inaccurate reporting and misleading the public. The Mingpao newspaper, which published the report, has issued a correction and an apology. The report on page A3 of the newspaper today has a subheading saying, the amended version of the Safeguarding National Security Bill would empower the Chief Executive and the Executive Council to issue national security orders to tighten control over the media. And people would be sent to the mainland to stand trial under 4 types of crimes. The security chief said it would mislead a reasonable person into thinking that, in the current legislative effort, there are clauses aimed at ramping up control over the media, and there are crimes that will result in the suspects being sent to the mainland. Tang said this is untrue and called the subheading malicious in nature. Mingpao has issued a statement and apologized, admitting the subheading is inaccurate. The Housing Authority today reviewed details of the redevelopment plans for Wu Estate in Pak Fu Lam after the proposal was mentioned in the 2014 policy address. Starting in 2026, tenants there will be relocated to a new housing estate nearby. Built in the 1960s, Wu Estate is one of the oldest public rental housing estates in the city, located in the southwest of Hong Kong Island. The Housing Authority says the redevelopment of Wu Estate will come in 3 stages. The first stage will start in 2026 with the moving out of residents of Wah On House and Wah Luk House, involving around 890 households. The second stage will begin in 2030 and involves most buildings, including shopping malls and car parks. The third stage redevelopment will be undertaken around 2040 and 2041. During the first two stages, tenants will move to other public housing units nearby, some of which are newly built. They will be given allowances ranging from around $10,000 to $32,000 at the first stage. Singletons and two-person families who choose to move out altogether will be given allowances of around $78,000 and $96,000 respectively. But they cannot apply for any form of public housing within 2 years. Eligible commercial tenants will have the option of receiving a one-off allowance of $125,000. Sources from the Housing Authority said the project design needs to be changed because of issues related to granite at the construction sites. Completion dates will be postponed by 2 years.
附近有冇可以接收
Clarissa Wong, chairman of the Housing Authority's Subsidized Housing Committee, said it takes time to make arrangements to accommodate affected tenants, and that such a large project needs to take place in stages, so it is understandable that the whole process takes longer to complete.
咁你而家起一個新嘅
Tony Jia, the legislator representing the surveying sector, said it takes at least 3 to 5 years to build a block of rental public housing. He suggests it may not be always necessary to resettle the tenants in the same neighborhood. Meanwhile, the Housing Authority said it is in touch with the MTR about the future South Island Line West to ensure its timeline complements the expected completion dates of the estate's rebuilding works. The Israeli military says it plans to move hundreds of thousands of displaced Palestinians in the southern district of Rafah to humanitarian islands in the center of the territory. Israel plans an offensive in Rafah to destroy Hamas bases, but its allies, including the United States, is worried about the welfare of 1.5 million Palestinians sheltering in the area. Meanwhile, the United States and other countries are looking at ways to send aid into Gaza, with some of the people there facing famine. More than 31,000 people have so far been killed in Gaza since Hamas's attacks on Israel on October 7th. Nasbi Karim with more.
As Spain's open-arms humanitarian ship sails towards the Gaza coast with 200 tons of food and supplies, another bigger ship is being loaded with goods to send to 2.3 million Palestinians. This as the United States wants to create a maritime corridor that would bring in 2 million meals a day for the starving in Gaza. It comes amid widespread international pressure to bring relief to Palestinians after more than 5 months of war, with close to 600,000 people in the north of the Strip on the brink of a famine. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said Israel is backing the maritime corridor concept, along with support from Cyprus, the UK, UAE, Qatar, the European Union and the United Nations.
This is something that's going to take time to actually put in place, although we're working on it as expeditiously as possible. And I want to emphasize, it is a complement to, not a substitute for, other ways of getting humanitarian assistance into Gaza. And in particular, overland routes remain the most critical way to get assistance in and then to people who need it.
Israel said 6 aid trucks entered Gaza in the north for the first time in 3 weeks, but aid agencies accuse Israel of preventing trucks from going into Gaza by refusing to provide security. Israel denies putting restrictions on aid delivery. Meanwhile, the UN says one of its relief workers was killed in an Israeli airstrike on a food distribution center in southern Gaza. Israel said the strike also killed Mohammed Abu Hasna, who they describe as a Hamas commander, but who the Palestinian group said was merely a police officer. 3 others were killed in the attack on what the UN says is one of the few food centers remaining in Gaza. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says his forces are still primed to launch an offensive in Rafah, where around 1.5 million Palestinians are sheltering. The IDF says it has identified humanitarian islands in the center of Gaza where civilians can evacuate to. The US insists that any offensive against Rafah must cater for the safe evacuation of civilians, though Blinken says they have yet to see such plans. Nazvi Karim, TVB News.
Ambassadors from the European Union meeting in Brussels on Wednesday agreed to provide €5 billion in military aid to Ukraine. The move is part of a revamp of an EU-run assistance fund as Kyiv's forces struggle against Russia's invasion. At the meeting, the EU's 27 members agreed to overhaul the European Peace Facility Fund, which gives nations refunds for sending munitions to other countries. The fund will help finance a Czech initiative to buy hundreds of thousands of artillery shells from countries outside Europe. This comes as Russian President Vladimir Putin says Moscow will use nuclear weapons if its sovereignty or independence is threatened. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's chief of staff met the Chinese ambassador to Kyiv, Fan Xiangrong. Andrew Yermak and Fan followed up on discussions last week with Li Hui, China's special representative for Eurasian affairs, on preparations for a world summit on Russia-Ukraine war. And the UK government is drawing up plans to stop foreign countries from owning British news organizations. It would give ministers the power to block attempts by Abu Dhabi's Redbird IMI to buy the Telegraph. The Telegraph, nicknamed the Torygraph because of its close links to the ruling Conservative Party, is 168 years old and considered one of the country's politically influential assets. Stephen Parkinson, the culture minister in the House of Lords, said the government would move to prevent foreign states from having ownership in British newspapers. Redbird IMI is run by former CNN boss Jeff Zucker, but the majority of funding is from Abu Dhabi in the UAE. Still ahead, an update on the situation in Haiti after the Prime Minister announced he would step down. The Consumer Council finds some anti-wrinkle eye cream products contain allergens. And the Wan Chai Harbourfront event space will open to the public tomorrow. Welcome back. Haiti's capital was calm on Wednesday for the second day following the Prime Minister's announcement that he would step down. Political leaders in the Americas are now pushing for swift follow-on action to ensure a longer-term return to stability. Danny Rao tells us more.
Haitian Prime Minister Ariel Henry said on Monday he would resign from his post once a transitional council can take over, following escalating violence by powerful gangs that has led thousands to flee their homes. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken told reporters in Washington that he expects the transitional council to come together in the next couple of days. That's despite the fact that some political parties have rejected the plan to create a presidential council to manage the transition. The panel would be responsible for selecting an interim prime minister and a council of ministers that would attempt to chart a new path for the Caribbean country that has been overrun by gangs.
This has been a long unfolding story. The heart of the story is the suffering of the Haitian people, and we want to see that brought to an end. But that requires a few things. It requires a more stable political system so that the country can function and function democratically. And for that, we need to see a transition to elections, to a clear return to a democratic path.
Blinken added he had received assurances from Kenyan President William Ruto that the African nation was prepared to lead a long-delayed security mission to Haiti as soon as this new council is stood up and an interim prime minister is picked. Haiti has long been impoverished and politically volatile. However, it has become increasingly lawless since the 2021 assassination of President Jovenel Moïse. The country's outgunned police are struggling to maintain security amid protests against the unelected Henry. Countries have been wary of intervening in support of Henry, whose government many Haitians view as corrupt. They're also mindful of problems linked to previous international interventions in Haiti, including a sexual abuse scandal and a cholera epidemic. However, Haiti's most powerful gang leader, Jimmy Barbecue Cherizier, who has threatened to overthrow Henry, had dismissed the Transitional Council, according to the Miami Herald. Daniel Rowell, TV News.
The Consumer Council tested 50 models of anti-wrinkle eye creams on the market and found 6 of the products contained allergens that could potentially cause an allergic reaction. Wu Estate reports.
Eye creams are essential to many people in a cosmopolitan city such as Hong Kong. The Consumer Council tested 50 models of anti-wrinkle eye creams and invited more than 220 Asian women aged between 40 and 55 to join a 1-month split-phase study. The purpose was to evaluate the advantages of the eye creams regarding wrinkle reduction and skin hydration. These 4 products helped reduce deep wrinkles. These 5 models helped to smoothen skin roughness. 5 models were detected to contain fragrance allergens. This product contained free formaldehyde.
Eye area is really sensitive. So if you are allergic to fragrance or formaldehyde, probably this time, you have to be mindful on how to select, the product.
The council also advised the public to pay attention to the expiry date of eye creams, adding fragrances in expired products may become oxidized and stronger allergens may be formed as a result. The watchdog also tested 15 baby pacifiers in flat on 3D designs and found 5 models did not contain any ventilation holes for young children, which failed to meet European safety standard. The straps of 5 of the models were too long, more than 220 millimeters, posing strangulation risks for young children. Meanwhile, many banking services are turning to digitalization under the technological era, but many elderly customers still prefer to use traditional banking services, such as queuing at counters to receive face-to-face help. The council conducted a trial at 10 banks to see if the services and measures were age-friendly. While 9 banks provide ticketing systems that reduces the waiting time for the elderly, 1 bank does not. Of 5 banks observed, some branches also have priority counters for the elderly. The council said banks should continue traditional services to cater for the needs of elderly customers. News 9, TVB News.
A man was killed after over 100 timber columns fell at a timber company. The accident happened at a timber company in Mancam Tow Road in Shengshui. Police received reports at around noon that timber columns weighing about 1.7 tons fell onto a driver. He was hit in the head, knocked unconscious, and later confirmed dead. Police classified the tragedy as an industrial accident, and Labor Department is investigating the cause of the incident. The Wan Chai Harbourfront event space will open to the public for the first time tomorrow. Its inaugural project will feature 5 themed mazes with free admission for 10 consecutive days. We had a sneak peek at the exhibition. A chance to get lost and found in this newly opened Wan Chai Harbourfront event space. Spanning 13,300 square meters, the hub will host its first public event with 5 mazes. Each one comes with a different theme, including this Lost in the Woods maze, inspired by Hong Kong's iconic bamboo scaffolding structures. Its designer said the exhibit symbolizes the city's development with an element of sustainability.
Bamboo is a fast-growing material. You can also kind of mimic or have a feeling that also kind of mimic the city, the character of Hong Kong, which is fast-growing. Another thing is just like because of this site, it's going to be temporary, so we use the bamboo, so hopefully we can recycle, reuse it in the future.
The exhibition's curator, who is also the designer of this mirror-themed maze, hopes the labyrinth offers a new perspective to see the city.
You immerse yourself into the journey, such as this one, the mirror, and then you see yourself in the mirror, reflecting yourself, and throughout the journey, you have different inspirations. So that's why maze is a good platform and medium to apply different creativities.
She also hopes a newly opened section of the Wan Chai Promenade can offer one more choice of public space for families in Hong Kong to enjoy. These inflatable air maze is mainly designed for kids with hidden corners and passages. It's also open for adults, but it might be a little bit more difficult for us to navigate given these barriers. The exhibition will be open to the public for free until March 25th. The week-long Hong Kong Flower Show will open tomorrow, and members of the media had a preview today. Located at Victoria Park in Causeway Bay, the theme of this year's show is Floral Joy Around Town, with Angelonia being the theme flower. Legends such as the Monkey King helped create fun. To celebrate the 75th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China, there was a garden of carnations of different colors fresh from the Netherlands. The entrance fee is $14 and half fare will be offered to some people, including full-time students and senior citizens. The organizer expects about 700,000 visitors to come to the show. And that's the news. Thank you for watching.